a second to get upstairs. What do we think? A little bit better? Better? Oh, that's better. That's a little bit better. That's a lot better. Is that better? Is it in my head?
Or you're loud.
I'm making stuff up.
There you go. There you are.
Holy. Hi.
Holy.
Hi. Hello. Hi, Fred. How are you? I thought I heard a motorcycle. And was a motorcycle. All right. What do you think? Let's read from the book of James. Who knew we were already in the book of James? And had it open, you all win. I don't know what you win, but you win. Yeah, gold stars. There we go. New LED lights for a motorcycle. That, see, we should maybe start, never mind, let me start preaching. Okay. All right, James chapter 2. Here we go. My fellow believers, do not practice your faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ with an attitude of partiality toward people. Show no favoritism, no prejudice, no snobbery. For if a man comes into your meeting place wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in dirty clothes also comes in, and you pay special attention to the one who wears the fine clothes and say to him, you sit here in this good seat, and you tell the poor man, you stand over there and sit down on the floor or by my footstool. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with wrong motives? Listen, my beloved brothers and sisters, has not God chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith, and as believers to be heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? But you, in contrast, have dishonored the poor man. Is it not the rich who oppress and exploit you and personally drag you into the courts of law? Do they not blaspheme the precious name of Christ by which you are called? If, however, you are really fulfilling the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourselves. That is, if you have an unselfish concern for others and do things for their benefit, you are doing well. But if you show partiality, prejudice, favoritism, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as offenders. For whoever keeps the whole law but stumbles in one point, he has become guilty of breaking all of it. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. Now if you do not commit adultery, but you murder, you have become guilty of transgressing the entire law. Speak and act consistently as people who are going to be judged by the law of liberty, that moral law that frees obedient Christians from the bondage of sin. For judgment will be merciless to one who has shown no mercy. But to the one who has shown mercy, mercy triumphs victoriously over judgment. This is God's word. Father God, I thank you again for the opportunity tonight to come together as the church. And Father, I pray that as we explore your scriptures tonight, that we are indeed convicted, that is compelled to live by them for you. Father, I pray that each person here has an open mind and a willing spirit to receive whatever it is that you brought each individual one here tonight to receive. And that we not only receive it, but that it becomes part of who we are as we walk through our day, through our week, through our month, and through our life. Father, I pray that your word always compels us to live better. Father, I ask that you would now increase as I decrease before you. In Jesus' name, amen. As I started my study in this piece of James, the first thing that came to mind is that this is truly a body of believers that is really good at not showing partiality. That was the first thing that hit me. Was, you know, the opening scriptures of this, I'm like, we're really good here. We don't really care if you come on the best motorcycle. We like it, but we're not jealous of it. We're not haters. You know, we don't say, you know, this person's better than that person, this person's less than that person. We meet each other on pretty even ground. And I prayed, and I was like, okay, Lord, so where are we headed with this? So here we go. Ready? Chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, talk about not being a judge with wrong motives. I landed pretty firmly on that part of this. Remember how I said in the opening to James that James was really going to harp on the law?
Yeah.
Because he was talking to some Jews, right? So he was going to get into the law in this letter. And so we're going to go back to where the law was very specific about some of this stuff. We're going way back to Leviticus. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, beginning of the book. Leviticus chapter 19, verses 14 and 15 say, "You shall not curse a deaf man, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear your God with profound reverence. I am the Lord. You shall not do injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor show a preference for the great, but judge your neighbor fairly." The law was very specific about this, and we can see that in James, that's exactly where he was going. He was speaking intensely to the law. It would be very easy to take advantage of someone with a disability. It still is very easy to take advantage of somebody with a disability. To do so would be a form of judgment or partiality. And I think that that is somewhere where sometimes we can stumble. Thinking that you can get away with taking advantage of somebody with a disability or like a blind person who can't see, it's easy to cause somebody like that to stumble. We could go a step further and say, don't poke fun at these people. I have a really good friend who wants to come to church. She actually has come to church a couple of times. She's a sweet young lady, and I was really hoping that she would be here tonight, not because of the message, but just because we've been talking about her coming, and she struggles with going anywhere because she has a severe disability and can barely walk, but she's one of the toughest people I've ever met. She's one of the strongest people that I've ever met. And I'm positive that people make fun of her regularly. The way that she walks, the way that people talk. Sometimes we don't even know we're doing it. Sometimes disabilities just make us uncomfortable, right? There are people that aren't uncomfortable at all around people with disabilities, but there are definitely people that are uncomfortable around people with disabilities. And just to show your discomfort, he's speaking against that here. Fear the Lord and his judgment for your behavior towards people. All people. All people. The rich, the poor, the disabled, the enabled, all people. The Lord would have us love people and never judge people. And again, I think I've got a phenomenal congregation when it comes to this stuff. But sometimes we just have to think about the little things that maybe we stumble on.
Right.
And we all have a little something that we stumble over somewhere. There is a place for judgment. There is a place for some judgment. But we're not to be partial to the rich, the poor, the enabled, the disabled. The poor don't need more attention than the rich. The rich are not any better than the poor. Sometimes the rich are in need of love, kindness, and support more than the poor. They don't need your pocketbook, but they might need your encouragement and your love. And this is where we really get kind of down and dirty on this, right? Is don't just think that somebody with deep pockets is doing fantastic all the time. Sometimes they're the one that's hurting the most in the room, more than a poor person would be. Everybody needs, my point, right, is everyone needs love, care, concern, compassion, empathy, sometimes sympathy. Everyone needs these things. And it's important for us to judge fairly across the board how we love and care and show concern for everyone and do it the same. To judge fairly is to discern properly. And we've talked about discernment a little bit and how we throw that word around sometimes, and sometimes it's used properly and sometimes it's not. But what is to discern? What is spiritually correct? That's discernment. What is spiritually correct? What does the word judge even mean? Judge means to form an opinion or a conclusion, right? It's to form an opinion about something. And sometimes we don't have any business forming an opinion at all because we don't have any idea what the heck is going on in that person's life. Deuteronomy, so if you're still in Leviticus, we're going to just go a little bit forward to the book of Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy chapter 1, Moses and the Lord put judges in place. Deuteronomy chapter 1, starting at verse 9. I spoke to you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear the burden of you alone. The Lord your God has multiplied you, and look, today you are as numerous as the stars of heaven. May the Lord, the God of your fathers, add to you 1,000 times as many as you are, and bless you, just as he has promised you. How can I alone bear the weight and pressure and burden of you in your strife, contention, and complaining? Choose for yourselves wise, understanding, experienced, and respected men from your tribes, and I will appoint them as heads or leaders over you. And you answered me, the thing which you have said to do is good. So I took the leaders of your tribes, wise and experienced men, and made them leaders over you, commanders of thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens, and officers and administrators for your tribes. Then I commanded your judges at that time, saying, hear the matters between your brothers, your fellow countrymen, and judge righteously and fairly between a man and his brother, or the stranger, resident, alien, foreigner who is with him. You shall not show partiality in your judgment. You shall hear and pay attention to the cases of the least important as well as the great. You shall not fear man, for the judgment is God's. The case that is too hard for you to judge, you shall bring to me, and I will hear it. I command you at that time regarding all the things that you should do. Commanded you at that time regarding all the things that you should do. So, judgment has its place. Judging is a real thing, and it's necessary sometimes. But just looking at this, I kind of honed in on the requirements of a good judge. And I think that those requirements of a good judge that Moses was putting in place are good things for us to think about in our judgment of things. We are to be wise and understanding and experienced and respected. So we're supposed to be respectful. There's a good place for judgment if that judgment is good and fair and right. It's important for us to judge some things, right? Because we've got things coming at us from every direction. If we don't pause and use a little bit of good judgment sometimes, we can get ourselves caught pretty good in a trap, right? So, but what I also honed in on here was that in verse 18 it says, hear the matters. Focused words on hear the matters and judge righteously. Hear and pay attention to the case. Remember that last week we talked about listening and doing, hearing and acting. And then we build on that this week in judging appropriately and hearing the matter correctly and looking at it and listening well to what's going on. Not just hearing, this is a trap, right? I hear the first sentence out of somebody's mouth, make judgment. Where's the rest of the story? Did we listen well and pay attention to all of the details before we make our judgment on whatever the heck it is? Are we judging righteously? Not self-righteously, but righteously. Are we looking at all corners and all angles of the situation and then making a fair assessment for what it is? Hear and pay attention and judge fairly. And if it is too difficult, do what? Seek help. Right? Seek guidance. Bring the matter to someone else. So when I'm trying to make a judgment call on something and I can't get all the way to the bottom, it might be a good idea for me to get with one of you. Right? And then we have to choose our listener carefully. Are we going to someone that is wise and understanding and righteous and good to get the guidance that we needed? The Pharisees tried to trap Jesus in cases of judgment all the time, didn't they?
Yeah.
So for us to think that the world won't try to trap us in bad judgment is craziness. We need to absolutely expect the world to try to get us caught in a trap of self-righteous judgment. But we need to be able to have judgment in its right place. And this is a difficult thing in the world that we live in right now. We're going to go way to the back of the book. So right in front of Revelation is a little tiny book called Jude. Jude is only one chapter, so we're looking at verse 14. It was about these people that Enoch, in the 7th generation from Adam, prophesied when he said, "Look, the Lord came with myriads of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all and to convict all the ungodly of all the ungodly deeds they have done in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh and cruel things ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These people are habitual, murderers, griping and complaining, following after their own desires, controlled by passion. They speak arrogantly, pretending admiration and flattering people to gain advantage." People have been attacking good judgment forever. Since the 7th generation. Okay, it was happening before that, but Enoch was in that 7th generation. People don't like judgment of any kind, especially in today's world. You can't judge me. Well, actually, I can. Actually, I can. Now, they might not like it, but I don't really live for people, right? I live for Jesus. And there are a lot of things that I say from this pulpit that somebody might catch on YouTube and turn it right off, and you know what? I'm okay with that. Turn it off. If Jesus Christ offends you, if I offend you because I love Jesus Christ, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I'd die with that today and be perfectly content. They can't stand to be judged when judgment is in its correct place, especially, because that pushes on them, right? They will, I didn't really love this, but it got my attention. They speak arrogantly, pretending admiration and flattering people to gain an advantage. They will pretend admiration of godly leaders and godly people and then tear them to pieces. The ungodly will make their way into churches. The ungodly will seat themselves among us. The ungodly will plant themselves in congregations and speak flattery and admiration all day long to get close and then attempt to tear us down. We need to be watchful of that. And we need to be using good judgment when it comes to things like this. Continuing on to verse 17, it says, "But as for you, beloved, remember the prophetic words spoken by the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ. They used to say to you, in the last days there will be scoffers, following after their own ungodly passions. These are the ones who are agitators, causing divisions, worldly minded, secular, unspiritual, carnal, merely sensual, unsaved, devoid of the Spirit. But you, beloved, build yourself up on the foundation of your most holy faith. Continually progress, rise like an edifice, higher and higher, pray in the Holy Spirit. And keep yourselves in the love of God, waiting anxiously and looking forward to the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ, which will bring you to eternal life. And have mercy on some who are doubting. Save others, snatching them out of the fire. And on some have mercy, but with fear, loathing even the clothing spotted and polluted by their shameless, immoral freedom." We need to be watchful of scoffers. We need to be watchful of fakes and phonies that plant themselves in churches. We need to be careful that we do not allow them to seek and destroy the congregation of Jesus Christ. We need to have good judgment. There is a place for good judgment. So we need to be careful because judgment is difficult, but we must build ourselves up in the Holy Spirit. We must build ourselves up in our faith. We must build ourselves up as a body of believers and care for each other and pray in the Spirit for wisdom when it comes to these things. We need to welcome people in, right? No, not show partiality. If somebody comes walking through the door, we love them, we encourage them, we care for them, we lead them, but we keep ourselves in love, the love of God. We have mercy on some who doubt so that we can lead them to Jesus, because we don't know who's walking through the door when they walk through the door. And we need to know in our heart and soul that everybody that walks through that door is somebody that we need to attempt to lead to Jesus. Amen? Everyone that walks through that door. But this is the place where judgment sometimes wrecks us. Some people need tender care, right? So in verse 22, have mercy on some who are doubting, save others, snatching them out of the fire, and on some have mercy with fear, but loathing even the clothing spotted and polluted by their shameless and immoral freedom. Some people need tender, loving care. Some people need a whole lot of patience, grace, and mercy. And still others need drastic action. And I love that these scriptures speak to that. Some need to be handled this way. Some need to be handled that way. And some need to be handled. Right? And that's the difficult place, is finding where each one of those fit and how to handle that. Again, I think that we are blessed in this congregation that we have people that are incredibly soft and gentle and soft-spoken, and others that are kind of in the middle, and then we have some that are just really good at handling the business, right? Verse 23 says, snatch them out of the fire. You guys, when it comes right down to somebody that we need to handle business with, it is about snatching them out of the fire. That's serious business. If somebody is screwing up their life, they need to be handled. Hate the sin, love the sinner. right?
Amen.
I can hate what you're doing and love you to pieces, but let me just be clear with you. If you're doing something that needs to be hated, I'm going to hate it, right? And I'm going to let you know. Because immoral freedom is the place most of us struggle the most. Immoral freedom is what totally wrecks us. Wrecks us. When we go back into James in verses 5 through 8, it talks a lot about dishonor. Starting in verse 8, it says, "If, however, you are really fulfilling the royal law, according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." That is, if you have an unselfish concern for others and do things for their benefit, you are doing well. But if you show partiality, prejudice, favoritism, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as offenders. Immoral living. You guys, immoral living is a train wreck. And if you think that you get to sin without having a conscience that compels you about that sin, you're wrong. You just don't. God is our conscience. If Jesus Christ lives in you, resides in you, and reigns in your heart, mind, and soul, He's going to compel you about your sin. Your sin should make you nervous. Sometimes other people's sin makes us uncomfortable because I like to say, if you can spot it, you might got it.
Yep.
Right?
Amen.
So sometimes what somebody else has going on in their life, it makes us really nervous and uncomfortable because we know that that's something that we should be looking at in our own life. The rich man, the poor man, the middle class man, the biker, the lawyer, the sinner, the thief, we're all in it. If you are keeping and fulfilling the royal law, then you're loving all of those people. All those people that we're all in and all a part of. If we're living and fulfilling and keeping the royal love of law, we're loving all people. Showing an unselfish concern for others and doing things for their benefit. What are things for the benefit of someone caught in the trap of sin? Calling them out on it. We don't like that. Makes us nervous. If you have a brother or a sister and you know that they are caught in a sin, it is your job to compel them out of an unselfish concern for their soul and a very serious concern for their benefit. And the word says, if you do this, you are doing well. It is okay to judge for someone else's benefit. Verse 10, "For whoever keeps the whole law but stumbles in one point, he has become guilty of breaking all of it. For he who said, 'Do not commit adultery,' also said, 'Do not murder.' Now if you do not commit adultery but you murder, you have become guilty of transgressing the entire law." So, if you have broken one part of it, are you less guilty than the person that broke the other part of it? And that's what keeps us all on even ground, right? So when we call somebody out and hold them accountable, we can do that with love, care, and concern by saying, "Hey man, I'm not perfect, right? But I'm just saying, I'm concerned for you in this area. In no way, shape, or form am I above you, but I love you, and I'm concerned about this." Verses 12 and 13 say, "Speak and act consistently as people who are going to be judged by the law of liberty." That moral law that frees obedient Christians from the bondage of sin. "For judgment will be merciless to one who has shown no mercy, but to the one who has shown mercy, mercy triumphs victoriously over judgment." What is the law of liberty? That moral law that frees obedient Christians from the bondage of sin. I love that. The moral law that frees us, but it frees the obedient. It frees the people that are obedient to Christ. It frees the people that get called out in sin and say, yes, thank you, sister, for calling me out in that. I'm going to turn from that and be obedient so that I can experience the freedom of the law of liberty. That is where we gain our peace. We gain our peace by living right. I tell people all the time, the one thing that I want at the end of the day is peace. I just want peace. I want to be able to look in the mirror and say to myself, well done. That was a good day. And there's one thing that I hate, and it's when I look at myself at the end of the day and go, dang it, you should have done that differently. Do you guys hate that as much as I do?
Yes.
At the end of the day, when you're just absolutely going, man, I could have done that differently. I could have said that differently. I could have looked at him differently. I could have spoke to her differently. I could have prayed differently, right? That obedience is what gives us peace at the end of the day, at the end of the moment, at the end of the conversation. Judgment is merciless to people that show no mercy. Sometimes we have to be merciful with ourselves, showing mercy on our own self. This is where that self-battery comes in, right? We can just beat the snot out of ourselves sometimes. Judgment is merciless to the people that have no mercy. I wanted to slide that in here tonight because I know that we are all capable of beating ourselves up, sometimes better than anybody else could do it. And when we're showing ourselves no mercy and judging ourselves, it is merciless. Those are sleepless nights. I'm a person that favors second chances. I really do. Because without them, I'd be nothing, right? But I can tell you that I have learned over the years to use really good judgment. The right kind of judgment when granting second chances. I believe we deserve second chances, and I believe that we lose the right to them at some point. I believe that when a person chooses the bondage of sin, and they choose, and they choose, and they choose, and they choose, and they choose the bondage of sin, at some point, I have to step back and let the judge handle them. That is also a hard place to be. But boy, you guys, it's important. And if we go back into Jude and look at those people that will plant themselves within us to tear us apart from the inside out, we have to be heightenedly aware of who we have in our midst. And we have to remember that that moral law that frees obedient Christians from the bondage of sin, that is God's law. It's God's judgment seat. And it's God's place to sometimes have to handle that sinner that is just absolutely not repentant, not going to move off of that place, no matter how many second chances they're given. Do we have enough faith in God? Remember that James is the book of faith. Do we have enough faith in God to know that He will handle the ultimate judgment seat just fine? Right? Yes, should be the answer to that question. Yes, should be the answer to that question. That if we are using our best judgment, and if we are granting second chances, And if we are doing the things that we need to do to welcome people and try to help them and encourage them and love them and support them and lead them to Jesus and help them to free themselves from the bondage of sin, if we are doing all of that, then the rest of it, we just lay at the foot of that cross. Right?
Yep.
Lay it at the foot of the cross and know that ultimately it belongs to the Father. And He will handle His judgment just fine. Final thoughts. Proverbs. Now we're in the middle of the book. Proverbs chapter 18. He who willfully separates himself from God and man seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. A close-minded fool does not delight in understanding, but only in reveling his personal opinions, unwittingly displaying his self-indulgence and his stupidity. When the wicked man comes to the depth of evil, contempt of all that is pure and good also comes. And with inner baseness, dishonor comes, outer shame and scorn. The words of man's mouth are like deep waters, copious and difficult to fathom. The fountain of mature, godly wisdom is like a bubbling stream, sparkling, fresh, pure, and life-giving. To show respect to the wicked person is not good, nor to push aside and deprive the righteous of justice. A fool's lips bring contention and strife, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are the snare of his soul. The words of a whisperer or a gossip are like dainty morsels to be greedily eaten. They go down into the innermost chambers of the body to be remembered and mused upon. He who is careless in his work is a brother to him who destroys. But the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runs to it and is safe and set on high, far above evil. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall of protection in his own imagination and conceit. Before disaster, the heart of a man is haughty and filled with self-importance, but humility comes before honor. We need to always contrast the wise and the wicked. It is always better to be wise, and it is always better to be cautiously in judgment of the wicked, keeping it far from our heart, our soul, and our daily living. It is always better to be wise and cautious than to slip and fall with the wicked. And it is always best to let the judge ultimately be the judge. Father God, I thank you for lessons in judgment, life lessons, and lessons from your word. Life lessons teach us how to do things better the next time. So when we are dealing with brothers and sisters, help us to have good judgment. Help us to use good discernment, spiritually speaking, to help each other out. Let us not just ignore each other's sin, but hold each other accountable in it. And Father, I pray, like I always pray, that we would have open minds with each other, that we would hear each other, and that we would know that we have care and concern for one another. Father, I pray also that our spirits will always be willing to be held accountable to a higher standard, because you do, in fact, have one. We know that we are blood-bought, blood-washed children of the Most High God, then we are forgiven. But that does not give us this immoral freedom to act the way we want to act and not be held accountable to that. So, Father, I pray that we would experience the law of liberty, that opportunity to be set free from the bondage of whatever sin it is that wants to take hold of us and set roots in our life. Father, I pray that we will always be well discerning of people amongst us. And Father, that you ultimately would open our eyes to anything that we need to see and deal with within our congregation. Father, keep us safe from the wolves that would, in fact, seek to separate and destroy us. Because we want to be a church that is effective. That is our desire for you. We chase after your heart, knowing that what you want is for us to draw people closer to Jesus. So will you protect us as we do that work? Father, I pray that we will constantly seek to be more wise through our experiences serving you. And in closing, Father, I thank you that this church is definitely not a church of judgment and partiality. I thank you that we are a welcoming body and that people know that they are welcome here. So thank you for that. Father, we love you.